Hi, I'm Tom Brown, and today I want to discuss the differences between system and style, because these are terms that are oftentimes used interchangeably in the martial arts community. I know I find myself doing it from time to time, but there are differences that exist here, so I think it's worth exploring. Now, a system is nothing more than a method or an approach. It's a means to an end. The system is many different martial arts systems, but I would say that for the most part, they're all designed to get you to effectively be able to use the basics in a self-defense situation. Or in whatever situation the particular system you study. It might be more of a sport martial art, but essentially to get you to be able to effectively use the basics. And there's another piece here. If you've followed our Understanding Self-Defense Techniques videos, you should already be aware. At the core of all martial arts systems, there's the individual movements, yes. But more than that, we need to understand how to use the individual movements. And so there's those ideas or concepts behind not just how to form your basics, but how to use your basics in combination with each other. So that's what the system is designed to do. And in different systems, there's different approaches, there's different methods. Now in our system, we emphasize self-defense techniques. You may emphasize forms. You may have a system that uses an even different approach. There's many different ways, and I think that's worth emphasizing as well. We should never look at whatever system we study as the way. We don't want to get bound to the system. The system is a tool. The system is there to get us to, as I said, understand how to effectively use the basics. Now, we can make a comparison here between martial arts and language, between learning in particular. Let's explore the similarities between learning how to communicate with the written word. Now, that's certainly a system. There is a systematic approach to it, and there's different methods, right? There's different languages that we can study. Now, regardless of language, what do we learn? We have to learn the ABCs. We have to learn how to form words. We have to learn the basics. And then once we do, we start forming sentences and then even paragraphs. We can write essays. We can reach a point where you can write novels. So this is a very powerful metaphor, because not only do we learn how to write, but there's something else that influences greatly our ability to write. In martial arts, a lot of systems use self-defense techniques, and many people will frequently comment that a self-defense technique won't work in a self-defense situation. And today I want to emphasize, it's something I try to emphasize often. You may have heard me say it in a previous video, but self-defense techniques weren't designed to work in a self-defense situation. They're a tool. They're part of the system. It's just part of the approach. Let's go back to the language metaphor for a second. We learn how to write. We're taught vocabulary words. Now, interestingly enough, and it was a very happy coincidence for me, I was reading an article, and it had nothing to do with this topic, but in the article, it actually segued into this particular topic. So when I began the article, I had no idea that I was going to stumble upon this, but it discussed a study that was conducted by Ann Cunningham at the University of California, Berkeley. And what that study showed was how children learn their vocabulary. And it found that it's not typically through direct instruction. We do learn vocabulary through direct instruction, but very often much of our vocabulary comes through indirect means. Now let me ask you, what writers are oftentimes the ones that have the richest vocabulary? What writers are the ones that have really truly mastered their craft? Aren't they the ones that are also usually the most well-read? See, that's where self-defense techniques come in. They're like the literature of the martial arts. They're the literature that the masters before us have written so that we can expose ourselves to how to form proper sentence structure, if you will. So that's, again, the system is the tool, and there's different systems. You can see that whether you look at martial arts or you look at writing. But where does style come into play? Well, again, whether it's martial arts or writing, style is about the individual. See, I can give you the tools. I can teach you how to form words and how to form sentences, but how you use them as an individual, the way that you use them in your own unique way, That's style. We have different writing styles. And it's the same thing in martial arts. The martial arts system should be a tool. You don't want to find yourself getting stuck to it, getting bound to it. You don't want to look at whether it's your forms or your self-defense techniques. You don't want to look at what was presented to you and get locked into viewing it from only that perspective. Now, these were ideas that we started sharing with you on Understanding Self-Defense Techniques videos. And I think probably the most important lesson in that series is to seek to understand the concepts. See, many students, whether it's learning writing again or learning the martial arts, they reach a level of competency. Let's explore, just stick with martial arts for a second. Many students that do stick with their training, because as you're probably familiar with, many students join a martial arts school, they stick with their training for a little while and then they quit. But students that stick with their training, many students reach a level where they can actually competently use what has been taught to them. Many students reach a point where when confronted with a self-defense situation, they know what to do. But if you truly want to free yourself from the system, you not only need to know what to do, you need to go back to the core. You need to understand at the core of the system why you're doing what you're doing. It's understanding the principles that will free you from the system. So this is absolutely critical in your training. And if there's only one thing that I could convey to you today, with whatever system you study, really seek to understand the principles or the concepts that are being taught to you. Understand why you're doing what you're doing. That's a very powerful lesson. And it's honestly, it's a very simple lesson, but it's one that I didn't recognize or pick up on until later in my training. Now, in our Understanding Self-Defense Techniques video series, we tried to emphasize that, and we looked at some of the variables that are at play within our self-defense techniques, because they should be looked at as that, variables. But we didn't really start making changes or playing around with the variables. That's what my new course is going to cover. That's what we're going to look at in my course on the formulation process. As a student in school, I studied physics. And in physics, it always amazed me how you can take a few simple equations and you can rederive or rewrite the equation, and you can apply that equation to many different problems. And that's what the formulation process will do for you. See, if you start looking at your self-defense techniques not as, well, I do it this way because this is the way it was taught, that's where we should start. Well-designed, well-developed techniques have lessons, and we start there. We try to understand the lessons as was taught. And masters that came before us probably devised the technique for a reason. So we need to understand the concepts or the why behind the technique first. But then we need to move beyond that. And we need to start playing around with the variables, because that opens up a whole new world of possibilities. You'll see your techniques and the system that you're studying in a whole new light. I think that I'm going to take a guess that at some point you've played around with PowerPoint. I know in school that was something we did from year to year in computer class. And you know, when you start with PowerPoint, you don't know what you're doing. So what do you start with? You start with a template. And this process is going to work the same way for you. This process, we start with a template. That's our techniques. That's another way you can look at your techniques. And if we're building a PowerPoint presentation, we start with a template for our first slide, and what can we do to it? We can rearrange the position of things on the slide. We can adjust the size of the font. We can completely alter the font. We can adjust the color in the background and maybe kind of regulate the brightness of the slide. So we can play around with the template. And that's what I'd encourage you to do. Now, as I said, I do have a course on the formulation process, but even if you don't have an interest in learning the process the way that we teach it, I recommend you view your techniques as a template and start playing around with them. Because if you stay locked into a perspective, like I've been emphasizing throughout this video, you're going to be bound to the system. See, something interesting happened through the years of learning PowerPoint. Well, you'd start with a template, you'd play around with it, and you'd rearrange it, and you might add things to the slide that you need to. But somewhere along the line, because you've played around with the templates, you don't need them anymore. You understand now what pieces you need in play, and you might oftentimes, instead of starting with a template, you start with a blank slate. You start with a blank slide and you put the pieces into place. And that's what this will do for you. If you start applying the same logic to your self-defense techniques, use them as templates, extract the lessons, understand why it's set up the way it's set up first, but then start playing around with the template and see what else you can come up with. And you'll be surprised. Not only are you going to discover that the lessons that you've learned can be applied to many different situations, much the same way, again, that physics works, where there's a few core equations that you can rederive. You're going to start to recognize, you're going to start to see your techniques with new eyes and recognize that oftentimes advanced techniques that you've learned are nothing more than rederived or reformulated techniques that you learned at the beginning of your training. So that's going to be the true power in this course. Now, if you haven't seen my Understanding Self-Defense Techniques videos, I encourage you to watch it. It's a free video series that we put together for you. It's a 3-part video series, and you can get it just by visiting my homepage. Go to the bottom of the homepage, and you can sign up to receive that series. If you're interested in this course, you can, again, go to my website, and under the online course catalog, you'll see, this is our first course that we have launched, actually. So you'll see this course. It's called A Lesson in Formulation. And what's great is that you can purchase this course and then you'll have lifetime access to it. Because I'm somebody that likes to go back and update things and see if I can't explain things a little bit better, or maybe there's something missing that I need to add into the lesson for you guys. So you'll have, as I update the course, you'll have lifetime access, which means you'll have access to the updates as well. And we use PayPal for our checkout. Now, you don't need PayPal to purchase the course. PayPal also accepts credit cards and debit cards. So when you purchase the course, you'll use PayPal. It will redirect you to their site, to PayPal. From there, after you make your purchase, you'll get redirected back to our site, and you will create a username and a password that just you know, and you'll be able to access your content instantly. And again, you'll have lifetime access. So as we do update it, which I'm sure I will, you'll have access to that as well. I hope you enjoyed the ideas I shared with you today. For me, this was pretty powerful stuff. When I understood it, it really kind of got me thinking and looking at things differently. And so hopefully this will do the same for you. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed this video. And again, let me know if you do have any questions. I'll see you soon with another video. Take care.